We're finally live. All right.
Okay.
Well, sorry about all the technical problems. Facebook didn't want to play nice today, so we are now live. Welcome to Columbus Creatives Live, and this is our second episode of the year, and I'm with Phil Garrett, who I met, I think, in 2010, right after Matt and I started Columbus Moving Image Art Review. You were one of our first artists to show with us, and we met. I can't remember what you showed the first.
I don't remember either.
Oh, well, that's fair then.
But we could go to the Moving Image Art Review website and probably see.
We'll let Matt do that.
Probably see what it was.
But I remember the first narrative that I saw of yours was Eroded.
Right.
And I think we did show that
Mm-hmm.
at CMAR. But at the time, you were at Ohio State, and you were not only working there, but you were getting your master's there in theater?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit more about
that?
That, or I don't know, your bachelor's and how you got into film, so we could start there.
Well, first, Eroded, which is a half-hour short narrative film, I co-wrote with John Whitney, and John directed and I produced, and that was sort of the first larger project we had done since we did a feature together in 2005. But yeah, at the time, so going way back in time, my undergrad was in business, so I have actually a BBA degree, which a lot of people have never heard of.
BBA?
Bachelor of Business Administration, like an MBA, but a BBA, not an MBA. And that was from Ohio University. And, excuse me, after that, moved back to Columbus and worked in the internet space before the web really existed. And met my wife there at the company I worked at, which was CompuServe, which is now long gone. And we moved to Silicon Valley during the boom in the 90s. And there I worked at startups for a few years, and Michelle built her PR consultancy, Garrett Public Relations, and that was doing really well, and I sort of got burned out on the Silicon Valley career, and was taking classes in film and video, and quit working in the internet space, and through serendipity really got the opportunity to start over as a PA at DreamWorks. At the time it was called Pacific Data Images, or PDI, which is a very storied company in the world of visual effects and animation. So it was acquired by DreamWorks, and there I worked on Shrek. I worked on a 3D version of Shrek, which was never released, the Shrek 4D experience for Universal, Shrek 2, and Madagascar. And started as a PA, and then did that for a few months, and then became an assistant visual effects editor in the commercial and feature effects division called Cafe. And there I worked on a number of movies, small movies like The Deep End and People I Know, so it's Tilda Swinton and Al Pacino pictures, and Evolution, the Ivan Reitman, sort of like trying to make Ghostbusters with aliens. And my first screen credit was AI, though, which was very cool because it was sort of Kubrick's last project, and then Spielberg took it over, so we were cutting on film and digital.
Ooh.
And so the digital editing was actually in spreadsheets, which was really strange, but it was a great experience. And then I went back to the production side, started learning how the animation pipeline works and producing animation, and there you go. And then we moved back to
Did you actually animate?
No. After spending a year in editing, that division was shut down. Okay. So my last picture there was Minority Report. And yeah, the job wasn't necessarily glamorous. I mean, you're an assistant editor, so you're handling shots going out, shots coming in, dailies, all of those kinds of things. But I was recruited to go to the production side and became a production coordinator on Madagascar. And then when schedules changed because of the success of Shrek, Shrek 2 went into the pipeline next. So I worked on Shrek 2, then we had some overlap with Madagascar, and then I was there for probably the first half of Madagascar's production, and worked on Shrek 2 related commercials and consumer projects worldwide, and then moved back to Ohio to keep my film career, going gangbusters. So
because we're gonna be awesome soon. We're gonna be awesome soon.
Well, it was really a choice about raising our kids near our family, and so it's so you make changes, right? So you make choices and then you adapt to that. I worked at a studio here in Columbus that was called Hot Donut Productions. That was a sort of a second life of a company called Character Builders, and we produced The Fox and the Hound too. So it was still in animation.
Nice.
Yeah, and then I left that job and started working in features and freelancing and yeah.
So I know a little bit about that side of you, but a lot of your work, I know the more experimental work. So let's talk about your more experimental video. Have we informed everyone that we've switched links? Do you need to update some links?
I'm sharing out with the general public, so trying to make it happen.
Technical difficulties, yes.
I think if they follow the old link, it'll take them to the same page.
Possibly,
right?
Yeah. I think Matt may have posted on the old link so that, if they see there's nothing, they can come back around.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about your work, and I think Matt may have some of your more recent pieces available in case we want to show something. So.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, it's different now than when I first started making, I guess, what you might call art films or experimental films. And I would say in the beginning they were much more personal. I think being in that MFA program and being in a class taught by Janet Parrott, where she was attuning theater people to film. And it was not really a class that was about narrative or anything like that. It was about cinema as expression, or cinema as telling stories, but not necessarily in sort of the traditional way. So for the first time, I was in a situation where I had not only had the opportunity, but had to make something that was experimental. And I think that, like a lot of people starting out in any medium, there's sometimes, and I experience this with my students too, right now, and is that you start out by trying to somehow make work that is sometimes overly personal. It's almost like you're trying to, it's almost like art as therapy, which is something that, you kind of need to get over. And using art as a way to exercise some personal demons or something. And so I made some work that was very personal. That's really not, I don't have it out there publicly available anymore. Not just because it's not a representation of where I am now with what I'm doing, but I kind of feel now like, as I said, it was maybe very personal. I'm not sure it's something that really should be out there right now. So
yeah, a lot of my work is personal too, and so there are a couple pieces where I'm just like, yeah, there are people and since our world is so connected, right, there are people that maybe I shouldn't see the portions in this that are slamming them. And so I do get that, where you have to kind of filter the content that is out there.
Sure. Yeah, I think so. I think, I did a piece about my parents, and I did just some other pieces that really were like expressing some deep emotional content that, you know, again, it's like that thing with people starting out in their art form. It's like you kind of have to get that monkey off your back. Mm-hmm. And once you do, you're a lot more free, I think. I hope. But then it sort of evolved into ultimately where I am now with that, the video art or experimental films. I like how Matt terms them as landscape films, or the cinematic landscape, or motion studies, and a lot of them are. They're kind of now things that I feel like I can't not do. Mm-hmm. I can't dedicate the time necessary to do larger scale projects right now. So, you know, I commute an hour each way every day to Kenyon College, passing through these very rural environments and landscapes, and broken down landscapes full of relics and all of that. And it's almost like I see images that I can't not capture. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, right now, they're finding their way to Instagram. So I think Instagram's a great way for people to express or to put things out there that in these short bursts. Yeah. But that also means that you kind of have to really make them concentrated, you know. At the heart of all of it, I think since the beginning, too, there was some of this, but a lot of the work that I've done over the past 5 years has had some common themes. One thing I say, and I'm not sure this is the best way to say it, is that a lot of it is about sort of this simultaneous interconnection we have with the world around us, but also our disconnection from it, because we're surrounded by, we're in this world. We forget we're part of this world, and we're so caught up in the day-to-day of everything, and it is difficult for someone to sometimes see the value in stopping and looking at the beauty that is everywhere. And it's not just beauty, but I'm fascinated by the complexity of the physical world that we're part of. And then that has different paths also. So it might be showing how nature and the human-made world interact or clash. Some of the pieces that I did, there's one I did in Iceland that's showing how even in a graffiti-filled neighborhood you see plants growing through the cracks, right? So there's this fight, I guess, between nature and the world we've made. And then I'm also fascinated with, you know, abandoned places, abandoned things. They're these relics, they're these artifacts of the past. They're like ghosts. So the newest piece I put on Instagram is old farm equipment in a snow-covered landscape. You know, it's kind of stark in a way, but there's something beautiful about that broken sort of undertone. Beautiful to me, anyway.
No, I mean, you got to Centralia before I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you made a piece there, right?
I didn't really make a piece, but my son Hayden, we've both had this fascination with abandoned places and strange things and urban legends and cryptozoology and all of these things. And so we went on a road trip, and he made a short piece about Centralia. Nice. A very short piece, and then we shot a lot of footage, but I didn't really make anything there because we were there, you know, for a couple of days, but it was a little rushed, and it was really more about the experience of being there together and taking that place in. And I think, though, if I were to go back, I would be compelled to make something.
Yeah. And I know Matt and I we haven't made it to Centralia, but we have stopped at the Breezewood tunnels. Have you?
No.
Oh, I haven't seen this. That should be on your to-do list.
Is that in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, it's in Pennsylvania, and it's like the turnpike that was there were 5 tunnels. I think there are 3
7,
that are.
now it's 5.
Yeah, 7, now it's 5. So there's 2 that are shut down. And so you can just pull off into this, I don't know if it's a state park or whether it's a national forest, and just park and camp. You
Uh-huh.
could camp. We just stop on the way through and park our car and walk up onto the old road that's been abandoned for, since the 60s, I think. And it's just this, like, Matt took the camera and skated down it with his rollerblades. and so I think that's probably something that you would totally enjoy seeing and
Matt
experiencing.
scrolling. Matt
No,
riding
no. That might be entertaining.
fun.
Matt trying to jump over the weeds as he's.
Yeah.
I did put a camera on my leg as I was doing it, but it was crazy shaky. So.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've seen things like that. There's the Moonville Tunnel,
Yeah.
where there was the old coal town, I think, Moonville.
And we did play around there too. Yeah.
Well, and even driving Route 40, if you take Route 40, Broad Street in Columbus, and you sort of connect with that outside of Columbus, getting off of 70 onto 40, you still see the same kind of thing. And you see the old motels, and you see a lot of those.
They still have some of the markers there along the way, yeah.
And you see the towns that, even if they have a bypass, or not a bypass, if they even have an off-ramp, they're still sort of like these sort of dying small towns, which I think all of that's fascinating.
So you drive through, because you work at Kenyon now, so you drive through where I grew up in Centerburg.
Sometimes.
Often. Or you drive past my doctor, who probably is going to be getting a call from me soon, because I should actually go to my doctor in Fredericktown, because, yes, I do drive 40 minutes to the doctor.
Yeah.
Because there's something to be said about, like, having that history with someone. So, yes. But, yeah, I recognize some of those landmarks that are from my childhood in your most recent work. Where I'm like, oh, I know that. I drive by that when I have to go up there. And so there's this, for me, there was a nostalgia in your work that maybe wasn't necessarily implied, but I took something away from it that was maybe extra. And I had a great time watching your newest work. How are you shooting those? Is it dash cam, or are you mounting?
It just depends on the piece. So I have a small tripod that I put on the dashboard of the car. So all that single point perspective work is using that for the most part. The piece where the film where it's just 3 minutes in the rain with the Brian Eno piece playing, and that's all, that's recorded, that's captured in the car. So that's the diegetic sound of the world of the car. So that's how I've done a lot of it. Or the time lapse, the driving time lapse is all done with that. I'm not actually holding the camera or the phone capturing that. But some of them are really holding, seeing something out the window, but being stuck driving, and you can't just, you can't necessarily just stop.
Yeah.
And you certainly can't just be driving and looking at the same time. So there are some.
You shouldn't. Don't drive and look out the side of the car. Bad idea.
It's not a good idea. So I have a couple of those where I call one POV and the other one's POV2. So one is kind of a midday overcast kind of thing, and the other one is in the morning. Sometimes in the morning, driving up to Kenyon. That sun on the horizon, whether it's sunrise or it's low in the sky, and on those days that you have in like September and October where it gets really foggy. So POV2 is one of those. That's what the content is. And that's really just holding the camera while I'm driving, pointing at the horizon through the window or with the window down and capturing that. And just really literally holding the camera out there. So there's no real, I think I have my own way of doing the things that I do that are specific to me. I don't think that it's necessarily like magic or anything. I think it's just that, like all filmmakers or artists or whatever term you want to use, find an approach that allows them to create the work that they hope connects with people or creates a certain tone or emotional impact. I was talking to a lawyer friend last week who was commenting on them and how he felt like when he sees them, he feels like he's there. He's like, I've seen things, I've seen films or I've seen photos with sunsets, but there's something about your films that make me feel like I'm right there. And I don't know why exactly. I mean, for me, I don't really do color grading for these short pieces. So I edit them in the phone usually, whether they're going onto Instagram or on Vimeo or whatever. The large portion of them are uncolor graded, uncolor corrected, so that they might sometimes have a raw or a realistic look because they are kind of raw, realistic.
And what camera phone are you using?
I have an iPhone 6 Plus, so it's a few years old, which is fine, except that I'm on my 5th iPhone 6 Plus because of factory defects. So a couple of times they have problems with their stabilization because it has analog and digital stabilization, and there's a bug that sometimes shows up where it's a bit overzealous in trying to stabilize, even if you've locked focus and exposure. So I haven't experienced that in a long time. I did once with this newest unit that I have. So that's what I'm using now. That's what I've been using for 3 years or so. Before that, I had the iPhone 5S, which I think, even though it doesn't have optical stabilization, I think that the camera that's in that phone is certainly on par with this one. And that's where I did all of my early work that I did in Iceland. Not all of it, but the first residency that I attended or was at in Iceland, that work that I did with the phone was the 5S. And before that, I made the first film that I made on a phone was on an iPhone 4, which was this super thing that I shot in 40 minutes outside my house in the winter that has insects or maybe the fall with some insects and things like that in it. And some Sigur Rós music, because why not, right? So that's my history with phones. I don't have the new 8 or the 10, the 4K camera and all of that. But
a lot of it is shooting with what is on you. And so it doesn't matter if you're using a phone from 10 years ago. If that's what you have, it may look really pixelated, but it's definitely what you have. And so you're more likely to shoot with it because it's in your pocket and you see this thing that you need to capture. Well, your DSLR isn't in your pocket, so there's something convenient about that. And as quickly as phones are changing, not all of us can keep up, and not all of us are going to have the same phones, so there shouldn't be this elitist, I'm shooting with the newest best phone. So,
well, I mean, ultimately, it's all storytelling, even in experimental art, or experimental film, or in fine art, or in contemporary art, or anything else. There's something behind what you're looking at, whether it's thematically linked, or it's even something that is, I've seen plenty of contemporary art that really is more about experimenting with materials, for example.
Yeah.
Or it really comes across more as an exercise in this sheer discipline that it takes to do something that requires someone to do very small tasks, again, thousands of times to create a piece of work.
Okay, I think we had a comment or a question. Do we?
Oh, yeah. So, I don't know if you've met Danny Bean. Danny Bean, he was a student at OSU. Yeah. He's a really good friend. He's actually helping us with our feature that we've been shooting, Those Who Spring with Me.
Okay.
But he had just commented on your about problems with cameras and stuff. It's just learn to embrace the camera's flaws.
Well, yes, and Danny was in my screenwriting class a million years ago. So Yes. Hi, Danny.
Well, if that was 1,000,000 years ago, then we were in Japanese with him like 1,000,002 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I taught at OSU through 2012, but I can't remember what year he was in class, but I do definitely remember him. And I think we're Facebook friends, so... except when you're not able to at all capture what you want, and then the flaws are a problem. There's a difference between something that is so overzealous in its attempt to stabilize that it goes off the rails versus the iPhone 4, which an undocumented feature was that depending on the level of light, it would change frame rates. And it would change frame rates on the fly. So you would look at your files, you would see, oh, I have 10 shots.
I remember you talking about that, yes.
I have 10 shots. Some are at 29.97, some are at 30, some are at 60, some are at 23.2, some are at 18.97. So it was a weird thing. But anyway, short story long.
Yeah, so Danny says 2010. He waves back. But then John Whitney stepped in. He says, Phil, you head out to shoot footage. Do you have a film in mind or a mood? Or do you shoot images that interest you, then through the edit, you discover a story?
Well, thanks for the question, John. We should talk more about the work that John and I have done together. But sometimes, yes, I have a specific set of shots or images that I want to capture. I haven't done anything like that for a while because I have not been able to afford the time to do that because I'm too busy with teaching and being new at a new school and teaching and getting used to that environment. Trying to be home more than I have in the past. So it's kind of a challenge to make the time. But when I have done that, I have gone out with a set of images in mind, but my approach is also an attempt to be kind of open to things that strike me. You might say in filmmaking or in theater, you would say improvisation, or in jazz or something, right? And so you see those images that you can't not capture. I see this thing, I must shoot it, right? And just having a process like that where you have a plan, but you're also open to things happening. And I try to get my students to at least try that approach as well, even when they have really planned out what they're doing. Sometimes it is about a tone. Sometimes, I've been doing a lot of things. I kind of throw the word around in there, Lovecraftian, because I have this idea for a short that is kind of a love letter to Lovecraft's work, but it is kind of dark and somber is not really the right word, but there's something foreboding, right? It's about there's a secret life behind everything that is this vast, unknowable, incomprehensible thing. So a lot of what I've done in the last 6 months or since I started at Kenyon, I would say kind of falls into that category. So, but the newest thing I put on Instagram, again, this broken down, archaic farm equipment in a stark landscape, is really about me seeing an image that to me was just beautiful. And then sometimes I collaborate with Josef Gislason, who is a Icelandic composer and musician, among many. He's a teacher of music also, and a lot of other things. So he and I have worked together for a number of years now, and he will compose something and I will make images to go with it, or I will give him some images and he knows a tone that I'm going for and he will write some music. But sometimes I do steal music because I find something that goes hand in hand with what that image is and what it conveys to me. And the newest one has a piece called song called Shadow. It's Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan when he collaborated with Eddie Vedder for the Dead Man Walking soundtrack. But Instagram said no, this is copyrighted. So in iMovie, I go into the speed and I just slow it down to 4/5.
Kids don't do this at
speed,
home.
or I speed it up to 1 1/4 speed, and their algorithms can't tell.
You ruined it for everyone.
I know. That's how you do it. That's a technique.
For now.
So yeah, it's just kind of an organic thing. It just comes to me sometimes, and it's just, you know, I make it for myself first, I think, and I'm not sure what people will get from it. I hope that they like it, maybe, or it affects them in some way. But you know, I read this interview in The Believer, 10 years ago with Laurie Anderson, and Laurie Anderson is a big influence on me, a big inspiration. I don't make work like hers, but as an artist and what she is and what she stands for and what she does is amazing to me. And even she said, you can plan all day, pretty much, that you can create work, put it out there, hope that people will get something out of it. Sometimes it's a direct story. Sometimes it's metaphoric. Whatever it is, they're going to bring to it their own thoughts, their own baggage, their own experience, and they're going to walk away with their own meaning. So sometimes you can control it, you can shape their view of it, and sometimes you can't. And that's fine too. It's fine.
All right, so you said you were going to circle back to projects that you did with John.
Oh, right. So we did a film in 2005 called Horrors of War, which is it's kind of a love letter to old war movies and monster movies and comic books. And that came out in 2007. And it's been out in like 20-some countries, and it's on Amazon, and I don't know where else. Maybe Redbox or something. I don't really know. I think it's on Amazon, though. So, you know, it was fun to make the film. I learned a ton, got to meet great people, work with great people. But since then, we went on to make mostly shorts. John was in a competition at IFC, Independent Film Channel. Wow. And so he made a piece. The name is escaping me at the moment, but it's funny because a number of our pieces have been about women who are and every piece we do, it's a character who is struggling with sort of the out of control forces around them that they can't really always control, kind of a reflection of the real world. So we did a very short piece that was like a 3-minute film, and that was kind of like we got the feeling of how we could work together and create stories with impact and meaningful content. And that was also the start of us seeing how here in Columbus, working with friends, collaborators, people that we respect, that we think like working with us, we could do these small projects. And yes, we all have our day jobs and we all have the things that we do professionally, but this is our version of creating art, or art for art's sake in some instances. So after that, we made a film, an 18-minute film. John and I came up with this concept. He wrote the script and he directed, and I produced. It was called Measured Sacrifice, which is it's a story about a woman who has a very difficult decision to make, a reproductive decision, but it's set against the backdrop of this, it's a low-tech sci-fi dystopian world.
God, I remember that one now.
Yeah. That one was in the Wexner Ohio Shorts program that year. And it's set in a future that's about 20 years out from where we are. We're still fighting the war on terror. It's a world full of propaganda, and there's a government program where women can sell their eggs to the government, and the government uses those to build, I guess you might say, artificial human or armies that are really slave armies that go off and fight these wars so that we don't have to. And she lost her father in the Gulf War, or in Iraq or something, when she was a child. And so she's struggling with, do I do this? Do I support this program and then be able to support my child, because she's pregnant? So to have a livelihood in this terrible future where it's still a world of the haves and have-nots. And so it's her choice. But she's got all this pressure. She's got this ghost of her father from the past, but not a real ghost in the film, but the idea, the psychological ghost. Yeah. And then being in a situation where she's stuck. So if she chooses to not be part of the program, then she will continue to be essentially destitute and stuck and she will, I guess, maintain her dignity that way. And yet she might feel guilt for creating a situation where another child might lose their father or something like that. Yeah. And then in the other case, she's part of the machine that is creating, that doesn't respect humanity at all. So in any case, there were a lot of themes going on there that we thought were really reflective of where we are now. And that's been 9 years ago, I think. After that, we made Eroded, which is a half-hour film about a man, a very broken man who's got a lot of problems, psychological problems, chemical, mental illness, who loses his family, and then in the wake of his grief, struggling with these mental health issues, other things start to happen. And you can go watch the film on Vimeo on the Arbor Avenue Films webpage, John's page, John Whitney's page on Vimeo, or my page on Vimeo, and it's there. It's in its entirety. It's 30 minutes long, and we kind of defy some of the conventional climactic 3-act structure in a way, because we spend so much time with this character. And he starts to encounter some things. He encounters something that is not something that you should hear or see. And then there's a tipping point in the film that's subtle that tells you whether or not it's real. Yeah. And it's really about it's uncovering a mystery also. Because he's driven, after he loses his family, he's driven he's driven by that guilt, survivor's guilt. He's driven by trying to find how this happened, who did this thing. Anyway, so that's out there too. All of those films are out there. Since then, we were working on a project for a number of years called Star and the Snowman, which is a crime, a low-budget crime film set in Ohio between Columbus and Youngstown, with characters who are kind of the last remnants of when Youngstown and Steubenville, between Steubenville, Youngstown, Eastern Ohio, and Columbus, with some characters who are still remnants or artifacts, relics of when organized crime was still involved in those areas. So here we are 20, 30 years later, and it's a story about those people. And two very flawed protagonists, a deuteragonist, right? The secondary protagonist, deuteragonist. And Star, who is Snowman, who is a kind of a enforcer for this low-level mobster world, and Star, who is a prostitute. Because in every good mystery noir kind of film, your anti-heroic protagonist has to be, it has to have a relationship with, a broken woman. So there you go. So we worked really hard to fund this film, and we were very close, and then at the last minute, that financier pulled out. So we regrouped, and then a couple of years later, maybe a year and a half later, started working on a new film. It's called The Street Where We Live, and it's was written by John Whitney and Dino Tripodis. And John directed the film. Dino is one of the leads. The lead in the film is Christina Koff, who is amazing. We've worked with her for years, and she's awesome. Theater and film actor. And it was produced by John, Dino, John's brother Gil Whitney, who's also the cinematographer, and myself. And it is a story, centers around a woman who is recently widowed. She works at a tool and die, living hand to mouth, paycheck to paycheck. She has 2 teenage kids, just making it. What happens when the GM ends their contract? So this is in the wake of the worldwide global financial crisis of 2008, 2009. What happens when you're living paycheck to paycheck and suddenly that's gone and unemployment runs out? And what do you do? How do you hold your family together? How do you live? How do you maintain your dignity? in the face of what are, to some people, not a big deal, but to people who are real living people in the world, right, that we don't see in films all the time, what do? Because for them, these are, in some ways, insurmountable odds. So it's kind of her journey trying to get back to some sense of normality. And Dino plays a character, it's her brother-in-law, who continues to try to help her, but she's not really telling him what's going on. And so it's a feel-bad movie, but it's a feel-good movie. I would say it's an example, I guess, of neo-realism, because we try to make it as realistic as possible. So it's definitely in the realm of realism. It's not naturalism in the realm of something like Dogma 95 or one of these like embedded direct cinema camera type films. It's not like that. But I think people have really affected. We've had it in festivals, we've had screenings, and people walk away. You know, there are people in tears, or there are people that come up to us and say, "That's my story," or people come up to us and say, you know, this happened to me. I lost my job. People are responding to it, and whether it's, you know, it's not, we have not gotten any kind of distribution deal or anything like that, even online or anything yet. We're still trying to put it in festivals, get it in festivals. So whatever life it has, the fact that it's impacted people like that is really what it's ultimately about. Is for us is reflecting the human condition in all of its color back to people. So yeah.
So something comes up from time to time when we have an artist on. We get people that jump on, students from the local schools and stuff that see you, and they've heard of you, and they have like a technical question, right? And so kind of missed it on a regular Facebook feed, but it showed up on the mobile. Madeline Anson, she's a CCAD Cinematic Arts student who came in after you had left, but like everybody still talks about the great work you've done there, I guess. Yeah. And she's wondering if you could just talk a little bit about like the ins and outs of the different editing programs you use, and kind of like a preference of something that you personally like to use. Sure.
Very short history. I started with Final Cut version number 1 in 1999, 2000, and I was with Final Cut all the way through 7. And then Apple decided that they didn't want to support professionals anymore. So I learned Premiere Pro and the Adobe pipeline. And I know that CCAD standardizes on the Adobe suite of products across the college, which is fantastic. It's phenomenal because in the professional world, that's what people are using. People use a lot of different things. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what you use. But the fact that you have access to Premiere Pro and After Effects, Photoshop, the whole suite of products is fantastic, and you definitely take advantage of that. Don't let that lab sit vacant every single night of the week, right? Because I'm sure you've seen what that looks like. But really quickly, some people use Avid. Some people have adapted to Final Cut Pro or Final Cut X or whatever they're calling it these days. And in some instances, you know, at Kenyon College, we are an Adobe school also. And it's great because it's easy to use. I think it's more intuitive than other apps, other programs. And we also have DaVinci Resolve, which most people know as a color grading, color correction product or software program. But really, it's a lot more. It has now embedded in it a lot of the same effects you would have in Premiere Pro, and it has additional plugins for things like denoising video. Some people will bring an edit in from Premiere Pro and then color grade in Resolve, but now some people are just editing right in Resolve. So I haven't done that yet. I haven't really learned enough about it for myself, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what you use. Yep. In school, you'll need to use Premiere Pro because that's what the school standardizes on, and that's what you use in classes. When you get out in the world, the technical aspect of that is helpful in terms of getting a job where they need people with certain skills to be assistants or something. But really, what you need to know is how to edit. That's the art and the craft of editing and telling a story with images. So you've got some great faculty there, with Liz and Adam and some others, and I'm sure that they're passing that to you. But again, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're shooting and editing on your phone, which you're doing in the intro class, I'm sure, or you did because I wrote the intro class and we designed it so that you would do everything on your phones. It doesn't matter. It's learning how to put pictures together to create a third meaning, right? So you're lucky that you're living in a day and age where the technology is so accessible to you. And I would say take advantage of it and learn different programs too. I think the more skills and knowledge you have, the better.
I'd say don't let the differences intimidate you.
Right.
So, like, I've been able to jump around just because all I'm doing is editing, right? I just have to figure out what keywords they're using to refer to what you're doing, what you're trying to do. So, are you cutting? Are you dissolving? What are you doing? And what are those keywords for Final Cut, Avid, Premiere? Are you totally mad about having to pay a monthly fee and trying to use Lightworks or DaVinci? There are free softwares out there that people use. Like Lightworks was used to edit the King's Speech, I think. DaVinci is really going strong, and I think they've used it to edit a couple things. Now, you're not going to get everything with a free software. Like Lightworks, I think you have to pay to get better editing techniques and better plugins and stuff. But you can do the basics on it, and even Avid now has a free software. I think it's very, very basic, but you can get familiar with the keywords that Avid uses just from using their free software. And so just don't let the difference in a word intimidate you.
Right.
Look through the menus and see what they have and go, oh, I think this means this, and play. Don't let it...
Yeah, I think it's good to find one that you're really comfortable with, that you can get really good at. They're all different. It doesn't mean that one is bad and one is good. I mean, again, on my phone sometimes I use Adobe Clip. Sometimes I use iMovie, but there are a ton of free things out there. And on the desktop side, I know that you have DaVinci Resolve Lite at school available also. So you can begin to learn how to use that as well. And again, that's only going to serve you when you're out of school, too. It's going to serve you in making the work now while you're in school and you're developing as a professional, a creative professional, a filmmaker. But it's knowing how to use these things to effect that will be part of your long-term success.
Way back when I started... I got a job at OSU, a brief, temporary job, and they're like, oh, I think we're using, an old version of Avid, and it was, one with a dongle, and it was limited to 2 gigs, and I sat down with it, and I was like, oh, yeah, this is the same thing as in Premiere, there's no difference here, and showed them how to use it. I was like, your problem is that you're limited on... what you can do, so you can't make anything with this. If you're wanting decent DVDs out of this, you're not getting that because it's back in the day.
They're producing educational DVDs for a reading program, and they're like, I can't even.
Our
get
clips are
2
limited.
gigs
Our clips are very limited here, and so I got them to upgrade to Adobe, but it wasn't because I wasn't uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable with Avid. It was because Avid wasn't doing what they wanted and needed.
Right. What's a DVD? Oh, just kidding.
Those magical spinny things with lasers.
Doesn't that need a needle? No. The other thing I would say, Madeline, is make sure you take the sound design class because you will learn Pro Tools, Adobe Audition. It's a huge feather in your cap if you really understand sound design and sound editing, because it is certainly in the filmmaking, it seems like production design and sound are the last considerations for a lot of filmmakers. Mm-hmm. And if you know sound as well, you're going to be in much better shape. So make sure you take Robin Gulcher's class. Robin is a craftsman and an artist with sound, and you're lucky to have him there. He's a gem. So pick his brain. Ask him if you can talk to him about sound design sometime. And
people are more likely to forgive video technical problems than they are audio technical problems. Mm-hmm. Like audio, if your audio's bad,
it's tough. You can have beautiful pictures all day long, but if your sound sucks, not to put too fine a point on it, people will tune out immediately. So.
All right. Well, let's
what
move
else
on.
Is going on?
So you've been in Columbus for quite a while now.
14 years, yeah.
But you grew up in Ohio?
I grew up in Springfield. Went to OU. Mm-hmm. Moved to Columbus. Lived here for 3.5 years. And then we moved to Sunnyvale, right down the street from Netscape at the time, and lots of other places. And, worked for a startup in Palo Alto, then Redwood City, then San Francisco. When I got to PDI, I was back in Palo Alto, and on and on and on. So,
and now you're here?
Now we're here. So, quite a journey.
And you're teaching at Kenyon now, which we've
do.
Brought up a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to talk about your education life?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. When I came back, I had a friend who was, she was the lead recruiter for DreamWorks and PDI. And she connected me with Maria Palazzi, who's the director of ACAD, the Advanced Computing Center for the Arts and Design at Ohio State, and said, hey, this guy knows animation production. I think he might be good for you to talk to. So Maria offered me a class called Concept Development for Sequential Imaging, which is essentially how to tell stories with pictures, storyboarding, and conceptual development. How do you take the seed for an idea and start at inception, and then develop that into a concept, and then generally create the elements that you would require to tell that story, but doing it all on paper and digitally, and then developing that into a story, and then learning to storyboard and tell stories with pictures, making animatics. So that's how I started, and I taught that class for 7 years, every fall for 7 years. But halfway through that, I was introduced to Janet Parrott, and they needed a screenwriting teacher, and I had been studying on my own and trying to write scripts for a very long time, and started teaching screenwriting, and that became a full-time job as an instructor, full-time lecturer at Ohio State. I co-taught the Buckeye TV class with Dave Fisher, and that afforded me the opportunity to get a super cheap master's degree, and so I wanted to become a professor, and so an MFA is a terminal degree. So I got an MFA in theater, and a lot of my work was about creating new works. So writing some new works, directing works, what you might call intermediality. So that's the integration of film and video and projections and other technology into performance. Mm-hmm. And when I graduated, there was this position at CCAD in the Cinematic Arts Department, and I applied and went through the whole process, and it was like the job was written for me based on what they wanted, with professional background and filmmaking experience and education. And so I was there for 5 years, and I'm in a position at Kenyon now in the film department. And so I went from Ohio State, which is, big school, Research One institution, to the art school environment, art and design school environment, and now I'm at a liberal arts school. And it's really interesting to see how the philosophies and pedagogies at these different kinds of schools are so drastically different. At the core, obviously, it's still about education, but it's different philosophically and pedagogically. So, CCAD, the real power in that program, and what I really liked about it was that it's the art and the craft, right? So it's everything from narrative film to documentary to commercial production, which would include music videos, commercials, industrial, corporate, profile pieces, all of that, to experimental. So, and it's a lot of hands-on. It's the studio education model, so it's a lot of hands-on learning, which is great. And at Kenyon, the program I'm in is focused on cinema. So we're focused on storytelling and narrative film. We do have we have experimental film in the art department, and we have a documentary course, but we are very steeped in storytelling and narrative, and students that go through the program, who they come out, they really understand story. So whatever the walk of life they go into, they're really prepared for that. So it's really interesting, though, for me to have gone through these three different types of schools. So that's kind of it. Yeah.
As someone who grew up there, Kenyon was like the school that everyone wanted to go there, and yeah, I didn't get in. Okay, go ahead, Matt.
So we do have another question from Danny to kind of backtrack a little bit and to move in a new direction of something I know you guys wanted to maybe talk about a little bit.
Sure.
He was asking, what do you think would be the biggest thing to help Columbus develop a successful filmmaking community?
Well, so I have a lot of thoughts about that. And I guess my question back to you, Danny, would be, what does that mean to you? So, and you can answer in your time there, but I can tell you my perspective and what I know from my experience and as a filmmaker and as a member of the board of the Greater Columbus Film Commission. So, what can help is a number of different things on a number of different levels. So the Commission's primary charge, the Commission, and just like the Cleveland or Cincinnati or the Dayton Area Commission or New Orleans or any other commission, the primary goal, the primary task, job, objective is to bring commercial film productions to the area. And with the ultimate goal of creating enough of that work to build a sustainable pipeline so that people living here who have learned the skills and become or are budding professionals or are learning to be professionals or are professionals in the area of production, whatever area that might be, can live and work here in a sustainable way. That's the primary goal. And at the same time, we also want to develop Columbus as a premier location for film production, film education, and film exhibition. So certainly in film exhibition, we are super lucky to have the wide range of exhibition we have. So if you start with the Gateway Film Center, which is a world-renowned independent cinema, and it's a nonprofit now, so it is a film center. It's not like going to AMC. There's a different goal. The level of programming is phenomenal. The range of programming phenomenal. The Wexner Center for the Arts and the Wexner Film and Video Program, phenomenal. All of these things, they're world class. We're really lucky. And then there's Studio 35 in the Grandview Theater. What Eric Brembeck is doing over there is really great, and people flock to all of these places. Chris Hamill at the Gateway, Dave Philippi, Jennifer Lang at the Wexner Center, and then there's the Drexel, right? So we have. I hope I'm not leaving anybody out as far as independent theaters. I probably am, but we're really super fortunate to have all of those things. On the education side, if you think about all the schools in the area, you've got Kenyon, you've got Denison, Otterbein, Oberlin, you've got Ohio State, CCAD, and there's OU. They have a great film program. I think theirs is an MFA program, perhaps. But that doesn't really matter. So in terms of education, and outreach, the commission and other organizations are interested in finding ways to support people who are interested in making films. So we're still, we're working on initiatives and talking with a lot of people in the community about how to make that work, and working with arts organizations to see what has worked in the past and try to kind of put forth some effort in that area. And at the same time, a big goal of any commission is to bring that commercial production to town. So we've had some nice projects going on. There was a Schwarzenegger film, a Stallone film, and a Bruce Willis film, which is funny because they're like the old school action people. And at the same time, there have been other independent pictures here, independent projects down in Granville. I have a filmmaker friend. He has a film coming out next Friday called Nostalgia. When he was here visiting CCAD, his name is Mark, he was fascinated that we have state tax incentives, and that really ultimately is the bottom line for a lot of studios and production companies. I think that he thought Columbus looked like a great place to make a film. There was a gentleman here whose name escapes me right now, but he is a producer of Z Nation on Sci-Fi Channel, which is shot in Washington State. And he line produced the Travolta film that was here. Yeah. So he line produced the Travolta film. He produces Z Nation, and he said Columbus is prime for a television series. Because it looks like Ohio, or it looks like something that's not LA, or New York, or Miami, or Chicago, first of all. And the wide variety of locations, types of locations, and low barriers to entry. In terms of logistics here. And we have the seasons, which if I were a filmmaker or running a TV show and I had a film set, or I had a project set in a place like this, and I could take advantage of all of those things, I would certainly want to do that. So that's a big thing. That's kind of the big goal. And so John Dougherty, who's the executive director of the Film Commission, is working his tail off to make that happen. And, so that's what I can tell you about that. If you have ideas of how we can support the independent filmmaking community here, please send them my way. I'm working with another filmmaker here in town, Celia Peters, who is also on the board of the commission. We are starting up a committee that's part of the commission that is part outreach, and it's part bringing together professionals and filmmakers in the area to really, look at ways that we can come up with initiatives to support each other, so to speak.
I think we're at inspirations, and we've been talking forever.
That's okay.
But I think I kind of want to circle back because I had note cards that I kind of ditched because it worked out and I haven't forgotten anything yet.
Because I've talked too much?
You've talked wonderfully. I see in your work a duality that not a lot of people exhibit. You have both an experimental side, which we've kind of talked about, and a narrative side, and you do some commercial work, right? Or you have done some commercial work?
I've done a lot of commercial work. I do some freelance now, not nearly as much as I have done in the past, and not nearly as much as I would like to, because it's nice to have that experience, and of course, obviously, to have some, there's income from that. But I last year did some work for a company in town for a big profile piece of a clothing manufacturer in Hong Kong, so it was all kinds of
nice
stuff. I have a friend who is also an artist, and I make films of his artwork. His name is Bob Falcone, Robert Falcone, Dr. Robert Falcone. And I'm actually going to an artist residency next week to film his newest installation, which is a sound installation, an environmental installation that is this large-scale soundscape experience inside of a pine forest in Indiana.
Wow.
So that's so yeah. I'm.
But you're one of the few artists I know in town that bridge all of those and are known for all of those. Whereas a lot of people, they're known for the one thing that everyone knows them for, and the other things that they possibly can do aren't necessarily recognized as much. And so that was kind of a compliment I was wanting to pay you.
Oh, thank you.
Like, you do bridge all of those very well, and people know you for each of them.
Well, thank you. I think I've done some nice work in all those areas. I mean, I'm never really happy with anything I've done, with the exception of 3 or 4 things. But yes, we talked about my personal work, my video art, film, whatever you want to call that. I don't really care. It's fine. But commercial production in terms of commercials, music videos, those kinds of things. Yes, I have that experience, and I try to continue to keep a toe in that world, to continue to have that experience, really, as much as anything else. Narrative film, whether it's shorts or features like The Street Where We Live, and documentary as well. So a couple of the projects in that area that we didn't talk about, and I'll just mention, is that I'm most proud of would be a film that I made with Andrew Ina, who was a local filmmaker and artist. He's an alum from CCAD, and I became very close with Denny Griffith, who was the president of CCAD for a long time and has since passed. And as he was approaching a big show or opening of his work at CCAD, I went to Michael Goodson, who was the curator at the time and who is now the lead curator at the Wexner Center, and said, we need to make a film with Denny about this work. So he thought it was a great idea. I teamed up with Andrew. We made this film. It's called Dennis and W. Griffith, Another World. And I think it really honors Denny and his legacy. He passed of terminal cancer. The film is, it's our love letter to him, but we made it with him. Yeah. You know, which was a powerful experience, to spend so much time in the man's last 6 weeks with him making this film. So I would say that's one of my proudest moments, was to have that film screen with Denny and his friends and family in that way. I worked with Vicki Golden, who's a professor at a professor at CCAD, who her husband's a police officer, and she had this initiative to do an It Gets Better film with the Columbus Police Department.
Nice.
So I worked on that with some students, and Vicki was very involved with that, as was Rhonda Grizel, and as was the chief. And I'm really proud of that work, because I then, in multiple occasions, got to see people that the film was about and the film was for. These men and women in the LGBT community who were in their 20s, 30s, 40s, who didn't have that kind of thing, and see how it affected them. And then to know that that's out there, and hopefully some sort of message to kids. You know, so in the documentary side of things, or the quasi-documentary world, I've had those experiences as well, which I've been really fortunate to have. So, and to me, I think it's because I love all of these different formats, or all of these different genres, or whatever you want to call them, approaches to filmmaking. And I like to be fluid. I feel like I understand them all. I feel like I can make good work within them all. And at the end of the day, they're all about story. So yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's babbling.
It makes sense to me. Well,
yeah.
Our audience is out there, so. So I was going to talk about your inspirations
Okay.
next.
Sure.
Sure. Let's.
Sure. Okay, I'll just throw a laundry list at you, and then if you want to talk about anyone, we can. It's Terrence Malick, Andrei Tarkovsky, Laurie Anderson, Mark Pellington. Was another person who vacillates between all of these different kinds of making. Oh my gosh, so many. Alan Watts is a current sort of philosophical, mystical inspiration. Just a huge laundry list of different people for different reasons.
Yeah.
Filmmakers and artists. I mean, Edward Hopper, who's a painter who has been gone for a very long time. There's a lot in his work that speaks to me that I really like. Yeah, I mean, there's more. I'm just kind of can't think right now, but yeah.
Well, I put you on the spot. We've gone from all this talking to inspirations. And I was going to add to that, and I can't even. I'm blanking now. So, any current or upcoming shows?
Shows. Not sure. Not sure.
I
haven't been asked.
Projects.
I haven't been asked to be part of a screening or any kind of show for a while. CMI AR, Moving Image Art Review, which is great.
So I want to do this right now real quick. So because this is something we don't get. So me and Nikki run this thing that Phil just mentioned, CMIAR. It's Columbus Moving Image Art Review, right? So is that what you call it, CMIAR? We actually pronounce it CMAR.
CMAR?
But
no.
People don't know. I don't know if anyone knows that.
No, you know what I do is I say the Columbus Moving Image Art Review. I say it like one big word.
Or we get art review. We do get that.
Yeah, and a plug for these guys. I mean, there are festivals and there are screenings and there are all these different things that go on, but Matt and Nikki have been doing this for a very long time. They're coming up on number 34. It's a quarterly screening series that happens at Ohio State that's supported by the Film Studies program there. Matt is the coordinator of the program, and the program helps out with a venue and some funding. But there is a call for entries that goes out, and it has been an amazing support system for local filmmakers, artists, and students to have their work screened, one, on a big screen, the big screen, two, to have their work seen by other people, most of them are filmmakers, to see the work of other people who are in the same boat that they're in, and to kind of have that I'm not alone experience, and to talk with others about their work, and to have people talk with them about their own films. I think it's fantastic. I think it's they have become real advocates and allies for a lot of filmmakers and artists here who a lot of people who are starting out. A lot of CCAD students have had a lot of work in there, and you can see too how over time, as they continue to put work in, how they get stronger and stronger. Filmmakers, sometimes it's animation, sometimes it's motion graphics, and you guys had some pieces last time. I've forgotten her name because I just sent her a message today about how she was driving around Columbus with all
Christina, Ryan, and I'm gonna apologize, Christine. I have not heard your last name pronounced, so I don't actually know how to say it. It's like Goulet?
I don't know.
Yeah, so
so let's say it's Christine
Ryan. She just goes by CG most of the time.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, first time I saw her work, and that was amazing. And so it's also fun. So, anyway, that's what I think it is. But I say Columbus Moving Image Art Review.
Okay. Because we knew that was a mouthful, but we wanted something that said something, but at the same time could easily be made into something that's a URL or a tag or something simple, 5 letters. Well,
and it is a quarterly series, but the fact that you call it an art review also, I think, speaks to the idea that it's like a publication, but it's like a live publication of works, And, yeah. So.
We set it up, we didn't want it to be critiques, because we feel like critiques are so hard, and you're so hard on yourself, that when you're sitting there, you're like, oh God, I missed this, or this was the wrong edit, and you're devastated, and so we didn't want it to be this, like, well, I don't like that you did this. I don't like that you did that. I don't like that you did
Some
that.
people have asked us. They'd like come early on. They would come and they would say, "Oh, well, it'd be cool if you like all sit up there and like talked about the work, or we could give critiques or something like that." And I was like, "Well, but that's art school, like." Or if you want to, there was a video critique group for a while. That's a great place. One person, 2, 3 people stand up and they just show new work they're working on, and they invite questions, right? That's great. Like, we want to have a place where everybody can just see the work and casually, informally approach each other, so that it's an open, welcoming relationship where there shouldn't be any fear, right? Because all of us are just trying to make work. We're trying to express ourselves through this medium, and we want people to see it, and we hope that it works. And sometimes it doesn't work. And the last thing you need is somebody like nitpicking your stuff if you didn't ask for it. You know it's not right, or most of the time, right?
Well, and it's like it's different than school or a critique group or something like that, because that's really not the point of it. It might be fun to do a round table, you know, sometime, where it's really a conversation among filmmakers and other people who just want to listen in. But I think it's been, and it also, I think another profound aspect of its connection to young people and to budding filmmakers and to students is that it builds confidence.
Yeah.
I put stuff out there all the time that I'm not happy with, right? And I see the flaws in it. And they probably look at their work and think, oh, this isn't what I really want it to be. But still, to have people respond to it, it builds your confidence, too. And so, you know, it helps them, I think, know in a way that this is possible for them. So I think it's great.
Thanks. So...
Oh, current... Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But real quick, you were talking about inspiration. So I guess Lori Anderson is coming.
Oh, is
she's coming. She's touring. She's doing something. So Nicole Desiree, she's one of our friends. She used to be here in town. She was involved in a lot of different art stuff. And she says she's coming this Saturday. Maybe it's where she is.
So it's probably in New York or
York.
Long Island.
Okay.
So she's like super excited to make. She may get to go. Maybe she's gonna make a plan to go see.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that would be sweet.
I saw her I think it was last year. She was here with the Kronos Quartet doing a new piece, which is great. I have a friend in New York who's a little technology projection designer, and he's done a lot of work with her, and I'm always jealous, and I always ask if I can come and work for free for a week while he does that. But she's there's so many things about her and what she does and how she does it that it's not what I do, but I don't think it needs to be for it to be an inspiration, you know.
Oh, she's going to be at East Hampton.
There you go.
She's going to be on Long Island.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Go
cool.
for it. Have fun. She's great.
So new art projects.
Oh, new art projects. Let's see. So there's the continual flow on Instagram of stuff that, you know, I can do.
So follow Phil on Instagram.
It's just Phil Garrett.
Which
Instagram.
I went to look you up just to make sure that I remembered some things. We've known each other for 8 years now.
It was 2011.
And so it was 2011? It wasn't 2010?
We first showed
the
two things with you, and so we showed Eroded, and then we showed something else.
You've already forgotten. Yeah. You looked it up.
Well, I know you showed some of those things I made during the MFA time. I had a series of Cobresia films and Overlooked films, but current projects. So the Instagram stuff will just kind of keep flowing. What I'm finding, though, is I'm not really happy with how those show up on Facebook, because Instagram will... Well, when you post from your phone, Instagram actually encodes a lower res version, and that's what goes on Facebook, and it looks terrible. Maybe after. I'm good. Thank you. Okay. But... So there's those. So I'm starting to put those up on Vimeo as well. So I have the film that I'm shooting next week with the Falcone project. I'm doing a short doc about a project at Kenyon College. It is the recreation of a historic, important piece of Laban, or Labanotation, a dance piece called The Faun. Was created by Nijinsky back in the 20s during the avant-garde time. And we have a pioneer in lava notation coming. She's in her 90s, and I'll be interviewing her, interviewing people who are putting the show together, Julie Brody, other people, and sort of making this artist profile documentary thing based on that. I work with the Gund Gallery Associates, which is kind of a mini student agency at the Gund Gallery at Kenyon College. We have our first short artist profile coming out. I think it will have a final on Friday of an artist. His first name is Uche. I can't remember his last name right now, but he's a photographer from Lagos, Nigeria. And kind of working with them and shepherding them through making short documentary pieces and promotional pieces and archival material for artists, about artists rather. Other than that, not much else. We have the street where we live. It's been in some festivals. We keep trying to hit the festival route. We'll see what happens. This Lovecraftian thing, if I can ever sit down and write the script. But I've got a friend, Lehman Kessler, who is Ask Lovecraft on YouTube. Is a big. That's his site. And I'm talking with him about maybe collaborating on this script. That. Yeah.
Awesome.
That's all I have to say about that.
I remember what we were going to talk about during Inspirations. So you had a residency in Iceland a couple years ago.
Yep.
Can you elaborate?
Sure. So I went twice, actually. I went in the summer of 2014 for the month of June, and in 2016 for the month of June. And it is called the Gamle Skole residency, which means old school. So it's the old school art house residency, and it's on an island, Hrísey, in Iceland, which is a very small island with a population of 120 that's in a fjord on the very north side of the country called Eyjafjörður. And so the fjord opens out into the Arctic. You're in the Arctic Circle. When you walk 100 yards from the house, you're actually above the 66th parallel. So it's great, and to be there during the solstice is amazing and inspirational, and just everything there. People are super kind, but just the nature, the variety of landscapes, the otherworldliness of parts of it, whether it's climbing the crater in Mývatn and seeing just the enormity of that, and that's just small compared to other things in the world, or going to Dettifoss or the waterfall, or just being alone and isolated in the middle of nowhere when you want to be, and having new friends there, and collaborating with my friend Josip has been really important to me and to my work, and he's a good friend, and so the whole experience of it. I mean, it's hard to sum it up in words right this minute, but it's life-changing. Really was life-changing in a lot of ways for me.
So is that how you met him? Was through that?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
He's in a group of artists called Northern Ball, which means Northern Fire, and it's made up of Josip and different kinds of artists, and they have this residency that they own and run, and Josip handles a lot of the management of it, so that's how we met.
Cool. All right, so we're almost through all our questions. Without swearing, this is just something fun. What is the most inappropriate thing you've ever said or done at an art show? Is this what we're doing now?
Yeah, this is the thing. We talked about this.
Okay.
Oh man, who can know? I mean, I think, okay, so I don't really compare myself to other artists or people. I just know that you have those experiences where you go to some shows, and I don't know what to say, except you have those experiences where you might be with your friends and you're kind of looking at what's going on there, or you're looking at what is in there, what's there, and sometimes you're just like, really?
Yeah.
And that's, and maybe it's there are times I don't understand what it's supposed to be, or I'm not one who, I don't know. I don't, and it's not just in art or art show. It's film. It's everywhere in the creative sphere. Of man, I do not like pretense, and man, do I shy away from pretension. I think it's one of the worst things that you can do. One of the worst ways that you can be in that sphere, and I really think if there's anything inappropriate to say, it would just be to kind of like talk with your friend about what you're seeing or experiencing. But at the same time, I try to also be very open-minded about it all, and just know that not everything is for me. Everything that I do isn't for everyone, and I am certainly not for everyone, and I know this very well. So yeah,
I have walked into, this was when I was much younger, and said, "Oh my God, that's just bingo dots on plexiglass."
Yeah, I think my time at CCAD really helped me to understand.
I've outgrown that.
Yeah, I don't come from the contemporary art world, or even like the fine arts, the traditional fine arts, and so I think though my time at CCAD really helped me to understand those worlds a lot better. And yeah, I mean, I had a joke with a friend, Tim, that there was this meme online that said, modern art or contemporary art equals, I could have done that, plus, yeah, but you didn't. Mm-hmm. Which is a super shallow way of speaking the truth, mm-hmm. in a way. But it's really those artists, though, what they're seeing is they're seeing something that other people aren't seeing or aren't paying attention to, or they're seeing connections that other people aren't seeing or aren't making. And I kind of feel the same way about some of the stuff I do. Mm-hmm. But, a lot of the art is political, which is great, especially right now. A lot of the art is certainly a reflection of the times we're living in, and I think there's power in that. Whether or not I like it isn't anything to do with it. I've seen, but some of it is just, the sheer will to make that art is impressive, and I would say I owe much respect to them. So, what else you got?
I think we've reached the end, and we've made you talk for like an hour and 30-ish minutes.
Okay, that's fine.
So, unless there's...
But do you want to... Would there be a piece on Vimeo that's short that we could maybe, after she does a close-up, maybe just throw up and let run for a little bit?
You can pick whatever you want. So there's that one, not the teaser. If you want to play that, it's fine, but the 4-minute piece is on there somewhere.
I think he just posted that in the comments so that people could see those.
Yeah, the other thing... So there's that. There's the Samtimus piece, which is the black and white piece. That one last played in Portugal. Anything, I don't care.
So the Serotonin?
Oh no, that's footage from the Roxy Payne show. Okay. Serotonin reuptake inhibitor. If you go to, I don't know.
Do the tunnels.
You want to run the tunnels?
Well, it's an example of the Instagram thing. I really liked the lights, rain collage, because the music, and just using what's naturally there and finding. But that ties into what I do. That's why I like it. So,
well, you could, play anything you want. That one's short, 30 seconds or something. Yeah. But
that's a good
whatever you want.
Way to close it.
Have an ego about it. You just pick something you like, I guess.
Okay.
Some of it, I think, it takes the people a minute to really figure out what they're looking at. The Storm is fun. Not the Kevin McClatchy demo reels. No, you don't need those. Kevin McClatchy, a local actor, professional actor, and professor at Ohio State. He's currently in the Ted Bundy movie that's shooting in Cincinnati.
Nice.
Yeah, whatever you want.
All right. Well, so I've been talking to Phil Garrett. Are there any... Oh, we have one more question.
Sure.
Nicole asks, where do you see innovation in filmmaking that makes you excited? This is not to say that you're seeing things that you like or understand, but rather what makes you curious to see more. Does that make sense?
Sure. I think maybe. You can look at some new technologies that are some really accessible technologies now, like VR and things like that. I think it's fascinating that Terrence Malick has a new 7-minute film.
Yeah, you posted that.
Yeah, that's a VR film. I'm interested in seeing that because I'm a big Terrence Malick fan. The technologies I think are interesting. I think I'm very interested in seeing what happens with that. How do you tell stories in VR? How do you make that experience immersive, but at the same time tell a story and not have it be a game, right? The 360 technology, 3D, all of those things, again, to me, they're more tools in the toolbox for telling stories. I like this movement that's been happening for a few years of what I would describe as lyrical documentaries, or documentary that is made in a very cinematic style. I'm inspired to see what people are making with their mobile devices, because you're starting to see people telling stories from their very specific point of view in a way that we haven't seen. Even with when mini DV came on the scene, you're seeing so much now that's real. And, you know, it used to be that 90% of everything that you would see was, we'll just say, not great, right? So you have to wade through that. And yeah, you have to wade through a lot of stuff to see, just to find the things that move you, impact you, touch you, or excite you, or whatever. I think those right now are the things I'm really interested in. I'm trying to think of what else. I mean, it's seeing what people are doing with this sudden access to the tools to make content. It's seeing somebody like Steven Soderbergh say, you know, here's a man who could make a film with any technology in the world that he wants, and he made it with an iPhone 10, which shoots 4K, which is fine, who now says he doesn't see any need to shoot with anything but that for his purposes.
Yep.
Which is not to say that you shouldn't shoot with big, expensive cameras. There's a place for everything, but
sometimes the camera that you have is the best camera, because are you really going to carry around, and I mean like literally carry around, a 16-pound Ursa just for giggles?
Well, I think too, it's like, what do you have access to? Because you can. So what tools do you have access to if you're starting out? If you're, again, a student, or if you're just getting going, it's use what you have, you know. And there are plenty of people who, though, are also seeking out older technology to use. It seems I'm interested too to see what people are doing with analog technology, to see what they're doing with older technology. But you know, in terms of filmmaking and what you have, the tools and all that, I used to, you know, I would say if you have access to an old, you know, dusty VHS camera, if you can't make a great story with that, then you're not going to make a great story with, you know, an 8K red weapon camera. You're just not going to. So use what you have. Make cool stuff.
I'm collecting old audio equipment, so I have my recording 8-track player sitting over there.
What? I've been looking at that, trying to figure out what that is.
Yeah, it says 8-track deck, but it will record 8-track.
We have not successfully had it record.
She's got 2 Edison wax cylinder recorders sitting on her.
What?
Like, she's trying to get them to work, and they partially both work, but in 2 different ways.
Go to the there's going to be a convention or something at the television. What is it? There's a television museum in Hilliard. There's going to go there and see if someone can help you figure that out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool. We did have one last thing. Well, maybe a few other. So a fellow artist. She was actually the last artist that was on the show, Nicole Childress. She asked, "What movie is your kind of guilty pleasure?"
Oh, guilty pleasure movies? Well, I was born in the 70s, so I grew up with all kinds of guilty pleasures from the 70s and 80s. I kind of skipped over the 90s, so because the 90s are not good. So, well, they're good. They're good and not good. I would say, so John Carpenter's They Live which is rife with satire and social commentary, but at the same time is just kind of a fun ride. It has the longest fight scene, I think, in the history of cinema, between Keith David and Roddy Piper. Fright Night, Tom Holland's masterful 80s sort of epic horror movie about a kid who lives in a suburb and a vampire moves in next door. It is sort of masterfully made. It's scary. It's funny, and it's a perfect example of cheesy 80s design.
I have a new watch list now.
Oh, it's great. And in The Howling, I think when I was a kid, it scared the crap out of me. And Joe Dante directed that. And I had the opportunity to hang out with him and talk about that movie, which was a big inspiration. But anyway, The Howling. I like a lot of horror and science fiction. Some of it not good, and those become the guilty pleasure films. But yeah, those are some, I would say.
So Hannibal.
Hannibal.
Or conversely, does this not matter due to increased distribution outlets? So he's talking about our earlier conversation with Amazon, YouTube, etc. So he's talking about the conversation with Nicole, gimmick and...
Oh, wow. I mean, you can publish, right? You can publish your own stuff. It's like the Amazon self-publishing.
What are we doing right now?
That's exactly what we're doing right now.
We're just making our own thing.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't
Columbus
even...
has no public broadcast TV. It hasn't for a long time.
Right, because what do they do with all that money the federal government gives them to support that?
Yeah.
Red light traffic cameras? Oh, wait, shouldn't that go to feeding the poor? Anyway, short story long.
We've been cut off now.
Government
can control.
Anyway, yeah, online distribution is crazy. What Netflix has done and what Hulu's doing, I think it's fantastic. It's TV as cinema. It's serialized cinema. Every week it's like watching a movie instead of an episode of television. I think that's super exciting. YouTube as being more than funny backyard videos and people ranting and people playing video games and Logan Paul and all this other garbage. Now that there are people who are utilizing it for other purposes, that's super exciting.
Backyard wrestling.
But I think that idea of self-publishing and democratization is ultimately, I think it's a good thing. It's just hard to wade through it to find the stuff that might appeal to you.
Definitely.
All right, I think we went down another rabbit's hole.
What else you got?
I think that's it on the questions. So.
Okay.
So our next show is going to be February 25th. Is it really the 25th?
Yeah, I believe
okay.
So. That's a Sunday.
Well, it's 2 weeks on a Sunday. Michael Watson, local comic book artist, and his comic books are based in Columbus.
Oh.
So
he has a superhero named Hotshot. He's a superhero here in Columbus. So it's gonna be cool to talk to.
So the poster is him in front of the Coda, I think.
Yeah, there's a Coda bus behind him. Somebody's saving somebody, and then there's the skyline of Columbus, and so
nice.
Oh man, cool. Okay, so I haven't seen this movie, but what I have seen terrifies me. Hannibal says you must ask Phil to explain his love for The Wicker Man, which he made me watch. I don't think I can. I don't think I can watch this movie.
The Wicker Man. Not the Nicolas Cage version.
Not the Nicolas Cage version?
Not the bees, not the bees. No, not that one.
Okay.
Well, talking about the Robin Hardy original film, which was made in early 70s, I think?
73?
73. And it's a story about a policeman who is dispatched to an island up in Scotland, I think, or north of England, which is a way of saying Scotland, to this tiny town, to this tiny village on an island where there's a lot of strange things happening. A young girl has gone missing. He's there to find her, and to try to solve this mystery, or to at least do some detective work. And right away, as soon as he lands, some strange things start happening. in the form of some locals who are wearing animal masks popping up behind fences and watching him. Very strange. And I think what it is for me is that it's the vibe of this, it's the vibe of the unknown behind this cultish community. Mm-hmm. There's something about those early 70s, some late 60s, but those early 70s British genre films. I mean, including the Hammer films, of course, but there's something about this that's creepy, cool. Now I would say it does have sort of some H.P. Lovecraft influences. There's no doubt in my mind. It's a mystery. It's not a happy film. It's not a happy ending. It's not a save the day kind of experience. And it just subverts your expectations left and right. And it's got, what's his name from the Equalizer television series, who was the lead. And then the antagonist is Christopher Lee. So you can't go wrong there as a cult leader. And then you've got a giant wicker man. You know? That's pretty cool. No, and you've got, what's her name? I forget her name. She's like a starlet. She's in it. And there's crazy pagan rituals. And, you know, man, it's a little boring. It's kind of like Terrence Malick made a genre culty kind of movie. You know, if you didn't like that, don't rent The Witch. You know? I would even say don't rent The Babadook.
I'm terrified of The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, so
I have never actually seen it.
I woke up after having my appendix out to Robin Williams' head floating, and I was never okay after that.
And screaming. His head is spinning off of his body. He's like, "Rah!" this whole time. I would, if you woke up to that in a drug daze, I think you would be anyone would be freaked out by that.
And I was 13, so it was just not okay. So
also, guilty pleasures. Some of John Carpenter's films. You know, I think he's made some amazing films, and then he has other films. So, like, some of those other films, like Ghosts of Mars, not great, but it's fun to watch. So, anyway.
Cool.
All right, so next show, 2 weeks, Michael Watson. CMAR, the website has updated, so, and we have a call that's open till April 6th, for CMAR 34, and the show will be April 20th-ish. I think we're not totally set in stone on that.
Did you see that we posted that we updated the website? So we posted the new call. We just updated the website this week.
Ooh, look at that.
And tell me what you think of this. Here we go. Hold on.
It's pretty.
It'll take a second. Come on.
It'll take a long second.
No, here we go.
Is this being broadcast right now?
No.
It's not being broadcast, but we'll post a link to this once this is over.
Okay.
I just want to get Phil's response as this happens.
Boom, boom, boom. Look at you, man. You got the good stuff in there.
We'll tell you. Once we're done, we'll explain why we did this.
I'm infamous. Yeah, that's cool. Well, and I want to say thanks to Nikki and Matt for inviting me on the show. It's fun. It's fun to talk about stuff that you love with people who love the same stuff. So.
And I totally butchered my intro because of problems. So our soundtrack was by Doc Rivs, and it was the soundtrack for a small short documentary that I did called Blue Beautiful Skies. And it's about a giant work by Granville artist Paul Hamilton. So I wanted to circle back to that. Again, I want to thank GCAC for the equipment grants and hoping all this happen. And let's see, did I get everything? Oh, so CMAR, movingimagart.wordpress.com. Is there anything else I've forgotten? Anything else you want to add?
No, man. Go see Nostalgia when it comes out next weekend.
Ooh, I posted a link.
Cool. And if you haven't seen it, I know you're going to think I'm insane, but on the big screen, you must sit as close as you can, The Greatest Showman. I'm not kidding. This movie is just, maybe you have to be the right age, I'm not sure, but it's just beautiful, and it's a super, super amazing example of cinematic art and craft, and performance, and talent, and it's just overwhelming.
We're going to go out while eating gluten-free cookies.
Awesome.
And they're good, too.
And we're going to close the show. I'm going to throw up, recently, Phil, we had shown a few pieces of Phil's at the Columbus Moving Image Art Review number 33. And so this is a 6-minute compilation of a lot of the work that he has talked about recently, which has the piece Storm. And then another piece that is what's the title of the Florida triptych?
Oh, it's like Lovecraftian Florida triptych.
Yeah, something like that. I had it reversed. And then the last piece is like a compilation of the Instagram things that you've been talking about.
Yeah, some stuff from a couple months ago.
So that's where we're going to leave it at. We're going to put those up. They should have sound and everything. And so hopefully you enjoy this last 6 minutes, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.